Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You've sent in your sources, and we're ready to dig in. Today, we're venturing right into the heart of Taoism. We want to unravel its vision of emptiness and non-being. And specifically, we're focusing on these really profound concepts, Wu and Zhu, as they appear in the Tao Te Ching. Now, when we talk about Wu, it's crucial to understand it's not just a void or absence. Think of it more like the formless generative source, the limitless potential from which everything, well, emerges.
That's exactly right. And exploring Wu, especially how it connects to the Tao itself, really requires us to move past our usual idea of emptiness meaning just lack. The sources you sent really push us to think differently about existence, about the relationship between what we see and what's beyond.
Okay, so let's build that foundation, the Tao. It comes up constantly in these materials. What exactly is the Tao in the Taoist view?
Fundamentally, the Tao is, well, the principle underlying everything in reality, according to Taoism. The Tao Te Ching talks about it in different ways: way, road, path, even technique. But ultimately, it's this enigmatic, impersonal, ultimate principle. It guides how everything just spontaneously unfolds.
Impersonal.
Yeah, it's not some deity you pray to. It's more like the ultimate cosmic order, the operating system of the universe, maybe.
That's a good way to put it. Impersonal, but incredibly powerful,
Yeah.
like fundamental laws governing things.
That's a really insightful parallel. And a key thing about it, which the Tao Te Ching stresses right from the start, is its formlessness, its ineffability. I mean, the very first lines of the Tao Te Ching say, the Tao that can be spoken is not the constant Tao. The name that can be named is not the constant name.
Oh, okay.
So right away, it tells you we're dealing with something beyond what language can fully pin down.
So it's nameless, wooming, like it says in Chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching. What's the weight behind that namelessness?
That namelessness points to its unconditioned state, before any distinctions existed, before heaven and earth were separated. It's the absolute, before all the forms and names and limitations we perceive.
I see.
And chapter 14 of the Tao Te Ching goes further. It describes the Tao as imperceptible, the form of the formless, the image of the imageless, again leading us back towards this idea of Wu, non-being.
Like trying to grasp a blueprint before anything's built.
Exactly. And crucially, this formlessness isn't just about something not being there, right? You were hinting at that.
Yeah, it feels more active than simple absence.
Precisely. Look at chapter 25 of the Tao Te Ching. It describes the Tao as something nebulous, serene and desolate, existing even before the universe we recognize. It's solitary and unchanging, called the mother of the universe. So its formlessness isn't absence, it's pure, undifferentiated potentiality.
Yeah.
The unconditioned ground from which all conditioned things arise. It's the possibility for everything, not a thing itself. Think of it like a blank canvas, empty of a specific image, but full of potential.
Right. Okay, so the Tao is this formless, indescribable source. Now, let's focus on Wu, again, as we see it in the Tao Te Ching. How does Wu fit into this?
Okay, Wu. It's often translated as non-being or nothing, and it's usually set against you, which is being or existence. But, and this is key from the sources, Wu in Taoism is way more than just negation. It's deeply connected to that nameless Tao. It's almost the Tao in its unmanifest state.
No thing, but not nothing.
Exactly. That captures it well. It's the primordial state before differentiation, the origin.
And Chapter 1 of the Tao Te Ching links them directly.
It does. Chapter 1 says, nameless Wu Ming, it is the beginning of heaven and earth. So namelessness and Wu are tied together right there at the start. And it's not passive. Wu is seen as a dynamic creative principle, a fullness of possibilities, the infinite, sometimes called Wu Qi.
Wu Qi.
Yeah. And the symbol of Pu, the uncarved block, is a great illustration. Raw, undifferentiated potential, just waiting.
Like a seed.
Perfect analogy. It doesn't look like the tree, but all the potential is packed inside.
So Wu is this, pregnant nothingness, full of potential. It's quite a paradox, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And there's this interesting point from the neo-Taoist commentator Wang Bi. He argued quite logically that the ultimate reality, the Tao, must be Wu.
Why is that?
Well, he said, if the origin of everything was itself a being, a you, then you'd have this endless question, what created that being? And what created that? An infinite regress.
Ah, I see. The who made God problem.
Kind of, yeah. So Wang Bi argued the only way to have a true ultimate source is if it's Wu, not a defined thing itself, but the potential for all things. It's unconditioned, indeterminate. Its lack of characteristics is its power. Unlimited potential for being for you. It stops that endless chain of what came before.
That actually makes a lot of philosophical sense. Okay, so Wu comes first, ontologically speaking,
Hmm.
and then you, being, arises from Wu.
Yes, chapter 40 of the Tao Te Ching states this very clearly. It says, all things under heaven are born of being, you. Being is born of non-being, Wu.
Okay, so Wu has primacy.
Exactly. It establishes the ontological priority of Wu. It's the fundamental ground, the boundless potential from which all the forms of the world emerge. Being depends on non-being for its origin.
It's like silence being necessary for music.
Mm-hmm.
Without the space, there's no sound.
That's a beautiful way to put it, yes.
And how does the Tao Te Ching describe this generation process?
Yeah.
From Wu to everything else.
It's usually described metaphorically. Like the Tao gives birth to the one, maybe primordial unity or vital energy key.
Okay.
Then the one gives birth to the two, after yin and yang, the complementary forces.
Right.
The two give birth to the three, interpreted variously, maybe heaven, earth, humanity, or just the interplay of yin and yang creating a new dimension. And from the three come the 10,000 things, Wanru.
Which is everything we see.
Everything, yeah. All of manifest reality. But the crucial point is that Wu is prior even to the one. It's before that initial unity, before any specific manifestation, the ultimate origin point.
But wait, aren't Wu and you also interconnected somehow? I think chapter 2 of the Tao Te Ching touches on this.
Good point. Yes, they're not totally separate entities in experience. Chapter 2 of the Tao Te Ching notes that being, you, and non-being, Wu, give rise to each other. But that's often read in the context of how we perceive opposites within the world, like difficult and easy, long and short. They define each other.
Ah, okay, in the realm of manifestation.
Right. But the fundamental direction of origin, as Chapter 40 makes crystal clear, flows from the unmanifest Wu to the manifest you. And importantly, it's not just a one-way trip. Chapter 40 also says returning is the motion of the Tao.
Returning.
Yes, it suggests a cycle. Things emerge from Wu, exist as you, and eventually return to Wu. It underscores the impermanence of forms and the constant underlying presence of Wu. It's like this continuous dance between potential and form.
Wow. This is incredibly deep, thinking about the cosmos. But the outline also mentioned, Zhu, this idea of the utility of emptiness, again from the Tao Te Ching. How does that bring things down to a more practical level?
Zhu, yes. It means emptiness or void, but specifically it's about the emptiness within form and why that emptiness is useful. Chapter 11 of the Tao Te Ching gives some fantastic examples.
Like what?
Well, think of a wheel. You have the spokes, the rim, but it's the empty hole in the hub that allows the axle to go through, making the whole thing work.
Right, without the hole, the wheel is useless.
Exactly. Or a clay bowl. The clay gives it form, but it's the empty space inside that lets it hold things.
Okay.
Even doors and windows in a house. They're just holes, empty spaces, but they're what make the house usable, letting you in and out, letting light in.
So the Tao Te Ching is arguing that the emptiness is what makes the solid stuff functional. It's not just the material, but the space it defines.
Precisely. The tangible parts, the you, provide structure. But it's the intangible emptiness, the you, within or around that structure that allows it to function. This functional emptiness you isn't worthless. It's absolutely essential for usefulness. The value of a cup isn't the ceramic, it's the cupness, the space it holds.
Got it. And how does this Zhu connect back to the big concept of Wu we were just discussing?
Zhu is like the functional expression of Wu within the world we experience. If Wu is the ultimate potential that makes being possible,
Yeah.
then Zhu is the operational emptiness within being that makes things work smoothly, function naturally without blockage. This links directly to Wu Wei, effortless action, which we can talk about.
Okay, I see the connection.
Think about an empty mind, too. Free of rigid ideas, it's more receptive, clearer. So Zhu kind of bridges the gap between that deep ontological ground of Wu and our everyday practical reality. It shows the power of the formless enabling the function of form.
The potential of Wu being put to work, in a way.
Exactly. Active in the world of you.
This whole idea of emptiness being powerful,
Mm-hmm.
it definitely rings bells with other Eastern philosophies. Buddhism, for instance. The outline mentions Sunyata. How does the Buddhist take on emptiness compared to Wu and Zhu?
Yes, Sunyata in Mahayana Buddhism, it's a common comparison. And there are definitely points where they seem to resonate.
Like what?
Well, both use negative language, right? Wu, Shu, Sunyata, Kong, nameless, formless, pointing beyond our usual concepts. Both traditions also critique the idea that the world we see is solid, permanent, independently real. And they both tend towards non-dualism.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, that resonance actually helped Buddhism spread in China. Early translators used Taoist terms for Buddhist ideas, leading eventually to Chan, or Zen.
So are they basically saying the same thing, just using different words,
Huh.
different paths to the same peak?
Well, not quite. The overlaps are there, but the differences are really important. Taoist Wu, as we've discussed, is primarily understood as that primordial source, the generative ground from which existence springs. It has this sense of being the origin.
Okay, the source.
Buddhist Sunyata, especially in Madhyamaka thought, is primarily about the ontological nature of things that already exist. It's saying that all phenomena lack inherent independent existence, svabhava, because they arise dependently.
So Wu is more about the origin point where things come from,
Right.
while Sunyata is more about the fundamental nature of things right now, how they exist.
That's a great way to summarize it. Wu is like the fertile soil. Sunyata is understanding the plant itself is composite, interdependent, lacking a fixed self.
That is a subtle difference, but yeah, a crucial one.
It is. And Wu can sometimes carry a sense of a positive ultimate reality, the Tao itself, even if formless. Whereas Madhyamaka Buddhism is very careful to say Sunyata isn't some other ultimate substance or ground hiding behind things. It's just the lack of inherent existence.
Okay. And their goals are different too.
Definitely. The Taoist goal is generally about achieving harmony with the natural flow, living spontaneously, ziran, acting effectively without strain, wu-wei. The Buddhist goal is primarily liberation, nirvana, from suffering, dukkha, which comes from understanding sunyata and thereby cutting off ignorance, avidya, and craving trinsna.
Different aims driving the understanding of emptiness.
Exactly. And you saw this play out historically in China.
Oh, so
Well, those early Buddhists used terms like Wu and Zhu to try and explain sunyata. This was called gei, matching concepts.
okay.
But eventually, they realized these Taoist terms, with their cosmological weight of Wu as origin, didn't quite capture the specific Buddhist meaning of sunyata as the lack of svabhava. So they shifted more towards using the term kang, which also means empty, but was perhaps less tied to Taoist cosmology to better translate sunyata. It shows a real negotiation of ideas between the two traditions.
Fascinating. That comparison really sharpens the focus on what's unique about the Taoist Wu. Okay, so bringing it back fully to the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
How does this understanding of Wu practically guide someone trying to live according to Taoist principles?
Right. So Taoism sees Wu as the bedrock for living harmoniously and creatively. And the main ways this manifests are through Wu Wei and Ziran.
Wu Wei, okay. Effortless action.
Often translated that way, yeah. Wu Wei. But it's not about laziness or doing absolutely nothing. It's more about acting spontaneously in tune with the Tao, without forcing things, without that ego-driven striving. Chapter 37 of the Tao Te Ching puts it beautifully. The way never acts, Wu Wei, yet nothing is left undone.
Huh. How does that work?
It means minimizing friction, letting things unfold naturally, like water flowing around a rock instead of trying to smash through it.
So aligning with the natural flow, being adaptable.
Precisely. And Wu Wei means embodying Wu by sort of emptying yourself of rigid plans, excessive desires, fixed ideas. You become a clearer conduit for the Tao's wisdom to act through you.
Okay, and Ziran.
Ziran, that means naturalness, spontaneity, self-so. The inherent way things are when they're not forced or artificial. It's the authentic expression of the Tao in each thing.
So just being natural.
Essentially, yes. Living by Ziran means embracing your own true nature, responding intuitively, authentically, without pretense or trying too hard. And the connection to Wu is that Wu, being this indeterminate potential, is what allows for this spontaneous, natural Ziran emergence of unique forms and actions. It's about being true to the potential within, without imposing artificial constraints.
So if we embrace Wu, this fundamental potential or emptiness, through these practices of Wu Wei and Ziran, the Tao Te Ching suggests this leads to inner peace and maybe creativity.
Exactly. By letting go of the ego's constant striving and attachments, by accepting the flow, you naturally find a state of inner stillness and peace. That's the harmony part. And creativity, well, it arises from that infinite potential of Wu. When you cultivate inner emptiness or spaciousness, you make room for new ideas, insights, possibilities to bubble up naturally.
Ah, like clearing out the clutter, let something new grow.
Perfectly put. Life itself, flourishing, is seen as rooted in Wu, the source of being. Wu Wei is the way to let that vitality express itself fully without getting in its way, tapping into the source by creating space.
Okay, so let's try to bring this all together. This deep dive really drawing from the Tao Te Ching on Wu and Zhu. It seems Taoism places incredible value on non-being, not as a negative void, but as this foundational creative potential underlying absolutely everything.
That's the core takeaway, yes. Wu is the generative ground, inseparable from the Tao itself. Zhu shows us how that emptiness is functionally necessary within the world of form. And Taoist practice, through Wu Wei and Ziran, is about aligning ourselves with this fundamental reality, harmonizing with the Tao's natural rhythms.
So Wu is the ultimate source of life, harmony, creativity.
Yes, because it's the boundless potential from which everything emerges. And its fundamental nature is harmony. It's the opposite of nihilism. It's finding life affirmation in the very potential held within non-being.
This has been genuinely enlightening. Really digging into these concepts from the Tao Te Ching is, well, it makes you think. It really poses a question for us, doesn't it? Could embracing the empty spaces in our own lives, maybe in our packed schedules, or even just in our busy minds, could that actually lead to more fulfillment, more creativity, echoing that utility of Zeus?
That's a wonderful, very practical thought to leave with. It really invites us to reconsider our own relationship with emptiness, not as something to fear or fill, but as a space of potential.
Thank you so much for walking us through that. It's been fascinating. And thanks to you, our listener, for sending in the materials that got us started on this deep dive. Until next time, keep pondering those deep questions.